All right, welcome in to another edition of the Cedric Maxwell podcast. There's a very happy-looking Cedric Max. Max, you don't look happy right now. Maybe it's because it's the morning. Maybe it's because you don't like me. Maybe it's because the Celtics are in a bit of disarray. I don't know. We're going to talk about all of that today on the pod, Cedric Maxwell podcast. As you know, proud member of the CLNS Media Network and brought to you, of course, by our friends over at Prizepicks, the #1 daily fantasy sports platform in all of North America. Download the Prizepicks app today. Use code CLNS, get 50 instantly in your account when you play 5. That's code CLNS on Prizepicks, 50 instantly when you play 5. Prizepicks, run your game. And Max, let's get into it. The draft is over. The carnage is over. I guess at least what we hope is the worst of it.
You think it's over. You think it's over.
I don't know. We'll talk about it, but let's start not with the draft as much as kind of the week that was for the Celtics, because while not unexpected, certainly traumatic for Celtics fans, seeing pieces of that championship team from 2024, this potential dynasty that never really was because of some bad luck and some injuries and whatever happened this past season, kind of torn apart because of the CBA and because the Celtics, frankly, Max, pushed their chips all in, went for it, knew the penalties were coming, and now the bill comes due. It's still got to hurt to see guys like Kristaps Porzingis and Jrue Holiday just be shipped off and watch the team get worse as a result.
It is. You think about, especially Jrue Holiday, and the fact that Jrue was very vocal. You've heard about him being really pissed off about the fact he was traded, but that's the business. That's the nature of the business. And isn't it so ironic that the place that you got Jrue from, you got him from Portland, he goes back to Portland. And I just don't know how long he's going to be there, with Chauncey Billups and that young group. But and then Kristaps was just fun to be around.
Yeah,
he was bubbly. He was energetic. He loved being a Celtic. And then you see the business again and comes on, and now he's with the dreaded Atlanta Hawks. So it was a tough week for the veteran guys that had made this team into a championship team.
So what's your overall viewpoint here? Because, I probably spend too much time, Max, dwelling in the Twitterverse and listening to Celtics fans. And, what I felt was for a little bit of time, almost a state of denial, almost like Brad will figure it out. And I do think, generally speaking, now everybody's kind of moved that goalpost to, well, what else could he do? My question is this. I don't think any fan out there would argue with, okay, you went all in, you spent all this money, you don't have any assets right now because you had a bunch of veteran stars who made a lot of money. You pushed your chips to the middle and you got a championship. I don't think any fan is going to argue that the return was worth it. But I do find it somewhat interesting that the narrative surrounding the team seems to be like, the poor Celtics, the CBA is so unfair. They knew the CBA. They did it anyway. So I'll ask you this. I mean, we know the answer, but this is a choice. They knew it. They went for it. They're paying the price for it. But was it worth it? Not just was it worth it. Could they have done anything different so it wouldn't be so traumatic at this point in time where they just have to trade off the pieces and live with being worse right now?
There's nothing that you're going to do.
Yeah.
As you said, you pushed your chips in the middle
And you got it.
And you won a championship. And you had 2 years or more of just euphoria.
Great basketball.
The way the team played, Tatum, Brown, Porzingis, this was an all-star lineup that was unreal. Jrue Holiday, Derek White, to see him develop.
Yeah.
It was just fun to watch them.
Yeah.
But it was just as dramatic to see it fall apart.
Yeah.
Beginning with what had to happen, the pieces that had to be moved. But I think Tatum his injury facilitated the move faster than I think that anybody wanted to look at. Because if Tatum was here, do you maybe try to keep this team together and go for another one if you had won it? Do you do that? But I think because of Tatum's injury, it made the process quicken that much more. And I think a lot of people are disappointed by that, average Celtic fans. But if you knew basketball, and John, you're like me. You know that the rent and you know that the mortgage is due.
Yeah,
And your wife then went out there and ran up all these credit cards, and you're going, well, the first of the month is coming.
it's coming.
What are we gonna do now, baby? So
Yeah.
you had to pay the price. And
Uh,
the
uh,
Celtics did exactly that. They paid the price. And the word you use, I think, is around a lot of Celtic fans, a lot of my friends right now. Keyword, you use carnage.
yeah.
Is a great word to use because I think that that's what people are looking at. What happened, the championship team, and now it's almost like that great animal that you have, this elephant that was out there who was wonderful and he was prideful, and all of a sudden his carcass is being picked apart by the buzzards, people coming in, flying in as he dies.
Yeah.
Not the Celtics are dead, but they have changed dramatically from what we thought,
Yeah.
what Vegas thought, what other people thought when it came to winning. And it's don't just say this it's us, but
Yeah.
it's just the narrative around this team right now has changed when you start thinking about championships and what is viable, or what you're going to be able to do.
Yeah. So you mentioned the Tatum injury. I think, uh, again, obviously that changes the dynamic for next year. I don't believe it changes what they would have had to do this offseason. They just would have been left with a better team because next year's team would also have Jayson Tatum. So could you tell fans, could you sell it to fans, hey, we're gonna take one step back and then we'll take one step forward and we'll be fine. Which, you know, you're still gonna put a product out there that's gonna have that would have had Tatum and Brown and White, which is great. That's 3 all-star level players to all 2 all NBA level players, that's talent. Granted with, not as good a supporting cast as they had, years past, but I I think some people think they're doing this because of the Tatum injury. I'll ask you, Max, this was coming one way or the other, right? The owners weren't paying 500 million in tax for this. I mean, 300 million in tax for this team, even if Tatum was
It it
playing.
it,
They're
it
not they're
yeah,
not running it back.
yeah, I think it had to happen. I think I wouldn't go that far. John said it wasn't going to happen. If you win a championship, the value of your team and everything else goes up. So you might go in your pocketbook a little bit deeper, but as you said, that it doesn't make any difference right now because the injury to me facilitated what you were going to have to do at the end of the day. Can you have Tatum and you can have Brown? Can you have those two guys making about almost 80, $90 million
Yeah.
between the two? And what are you going to do with the rest of your team? This is going to be an interesting process.
Yeah.
And you and I talked, we haven't talked, but you text back and forth, and we talked about, well, what's going to happen right now with Joe Mazzulla? How is his coaching stance going to be? And the one thing you mentioned before, how is the relationship with Joe Mazzulla and the press going to be if you don't have a championship team? Because you said it yourself. You said, people, when is the rent coming due with Joe Mazzulla? I mean, when you talk about the media, I
Yeah.
happen to love Joe Mazzulla. I happen to love his going back and forth with the media. One of our guys, Danny Manning, all these guys you have out there in this media world, that have been out there going back and forth with him. How does the dynamics of that change when you think about the coach and what he's going to do with his players and what he's going to do to his relationship with the media?
Yeah. And the Joe question is interesting, and I do wanna, dive into that a little bit. Media is one thing, and I've said it a million times. I've been a member of the media for 30 plus years. I think it's the least it matters for perception, but what he says to reporters doesn't affect whether or not the managers and the owners like him. If he's doing the job and the wins are there and they like the style, that's fine. That just you get hurt feelings from Bobby Manning, but that's about it. But realistically, it's less about that and more the younger players. Now, we had on the Garden Report Baylor Scheierman on a couple weeks ago, and he said Joe told me first conversation we had that he doesn't like rookies. And then Torrey Craig had a story also on the Garden Report with Noah and Bobby that Shireman and Joe got in this weird standoff one time, and they had to have like a team meeting to resolve it, because one guy couldn't get in. They wanted to go through a door at the same, something really silly. Now, Joe's got to learn to love younger players. And I'm not saying the guys they drafted, and we'll get into that a little bit, are going to perform. You got two guys late in the second round are going to be two-way contracts. You're probably going to be spending the majority of their lives in Maine, if not, certainly most of next season, if not all of it. And maybe you get the kid from Spain who's tagging along, but still not NBA ready. Hugo here at 19 years old. But over the course of the next year or two, the only path to success moving forward for these guys, Max, is you got to find young ascending talent to put because what young equals cheap, and they have to have some cheaper players who can contribute. You can't just go be signing $35 million guys. You'll be back in the same situation you were before. So the reason they're in this situation, they don't have those guys. So they have to develop. They have to bring in younger talent. They have to draft and develop. So Joe's got to learn to love
Yeah.
these guys, and he's got to learn to play people who can't do everything he wants them to do. And his stuff he's high level in terms of his expectations of what he wants, both offensively and defensively, rightfully so. But he's been dealing with professionals who get it and know exactly how
High level,
high
very
level
talented players that can play at that level.
and who could do all of it.
I
Yeah.
think you're hitting it on the head when you say that. But you're gonna look now at what's gonna happen at OKC. Just won the championship. How are some of those guys gonna perform? How are they gonna keep a guy like Lou Dort, who is who is there as his contract was a smaller contract. He's going to want to get paid. Everybody wants to get paid in this league. At the end of the day, you have Pritchard right now signed to. That's a team-friendly contract. What happens with Hauser? Hauser a guaranteed contract. Does he hang around? What does Joe do in the interim? And that's going to be very, very interesting. Scheierman, I really love Scheierman.
I like him.
I think he plays at such.
Havlicek,
I think he takes the next level. You can say Havlicek. I said
you
that
said it.
people got in my ass when I said it. But he's a smart, heady player. He shoots the ball well. He defends the ball well. Now, by Tatum getting injured, this one thing could happen with this team. His development could be going on the express train because now he's going to have to take some of those minutes that Tatum had and utilize his skill set of being a passer, being a facilitator. I mean, you hear so many rumors about this team that are you going to make another splash?
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear all these things about Jaylen Brown. All these teams right now are calling about Jaylen Brown. Is he available? Is he available? John, what you've done right now and what Brad has done with this team. I mean, you have this right now because you have young kids. What do you have? You just put your kickstand down. Okay, if you know what a kickstand is on your bicycle, put your kickstand down, let your bike sit for a while, and just it balances itself. That's what happens with this team right now. They're going to be in a situation where they're going to have to find players, develop players, and get everybody on the same page, and yet still try to put a product out there in a weaker, shall we say, a weaker Eastern Conference. When you think about it, who's in the East right now that you're going, oh my God, I got a fear for them? Is it the
But
Knicks now? It's not
it,
Philly.
well,
Who is it?
it's less fear and more. Before you were going, 100 miles an hour in the left lane, and now you're puttering along at 60 in the middle lane, which means you're easier to pass. So all of a sudden, Orlando, Atlanta, teams you didn't view as threats last year are right now building teams that are going to be competitive, if not better than you. Because again, Max, let's put it on paper right now. Maybe more can happen, but the reality of the math is they got themselves under that second apron by about $4.5 million or whatever it is. They got a ways to go if they want to get under the first apron too. Question is, which direction do they go? If you listen to the press conferences from Brad Stevens, and even more telling, I thought Mike Zarin on Thursday night, the general vibe is we're gonna have to get it done with what we've got here. And at that moment, and we don't know what's gonna happen in free agency with the bigs. They don't have a center. I mean, they do, but his name is Nemish Queta. Right now, if this is what you're rolling out there, and you can't spend more money to either retain Luke Cornett or Al Horford, both of whom are going to demand more than you have to offer right now, you have to trade more assets. You have to trade more players just to sign one of those guys and have a center. So
Well,
if
wait a
you,
minute, wait a minute, John. Before you said that, Luke came back at a
he did,
very friendly.
but
Does he do that?
maybe, maybe, but he came back on that friendly and then had a career year where the
Yeah,
world took notice. And now his stock is a good bit higher this year than it was
yeah.
last year.
Hmm.
And he's not returning to win a championship with his buddies. He's coming back to a rebuilding situation. There's value to Luke coming here because there's starter minutes to be had. He's not getting that anywhere else, but there might be more money to be had. We don't know Luke's mind. But let's just say for a hypothetical, if you don't sign anybody else and just live with what you have here and maybe grab a vet minimum guy to plug a hole here along the way, which is about what you have left to play with, you're looking at a starting lineup of Nemish Queta at center, either George Niang or Xavier Tillman at the four, Jaylen Brown, Derek White, and Anthony Simons and or Peyton Pritchard, with a bench that has either Pritchard or Simons, Baylor Scheierman, Jordan Walsh. That, Max, is a team that could really go in a direction we would not have expected this franchise could go, because mainly because Jayson Tatum's not there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that is true.
That team that
When
could be
when
anywhere from 25 to 45 wins. You have no
uh,
idea.
you're in there, and I think you're exactly right with this team on where you look at what can be projected. Um, are they a playoff team? Will they
Right.
will they make the playoff? Will they getting what's their window? What's their um, absolute ceiling for
Yeah.
next year? Or are we looking at making the playoffs? Because as you said, Sean Grandy, my broadcast partner on radio, says one thing, and I think it's really true. All those teams you beat the hell out of over the last couple of years, Days they and put like my kid would say back in the
They're
day.
coming.
They no days are coming. Days are coming for you, and they're thinking right now. Yeah, okay, all right, Celtics. We know what you did. How about the Charlotte team, who's gotten much better? Who you whipped up on the last couple of years. You feasted on, and you remember Tatum's line when he said,
Yeah.
oh yeah, you know what? Even on a Monday night with no TV or whatever it is, look, I'm gonna go out and play against a team like Charlotte. That's bulletin board material in itself.
Oh yeah.
So I think there's a lot of angst in Celtics Nation right now. I'm hearing it from a lot of people, but that's the way the cookie is crumbled.
Yeah.
And with Jayson Tatum being out, it's going to do. I think the silver lining to me is looking at a guy like Baylor Scheierman and seeing what he can become with quality minutes. Because you're gonna spoon feed him. You're gonna force feed him right now with minutes and opportunities just to see if a guy like Cedric Maxwell says something like John Havlicek, Johnny Havlicek. So you will get a chance to see that.
Yeah, no doubt. And so that's kind of what it comes back to. You mentioned Shireman and there's some promise there, but I think there's probably a ceiling on how far you can go there. I think what's hurting them most right now is, you know, they really had a couple of swings there in those drafts in 20 and 21 back when Danny was in charge to have, brought in some younger talent because they did have the picks there with Romeo. I'm sorry, it was 19 and 20. When they took Romeo and Neesmith. And I know that seems like a long time ago, but really that was their last chance to uh, cash in on premium assets, which is
And
lottery.
look what happened with Neesmith.
And that was great. But Neesmith got drafted into a team that was competitive and he never developed. But they didn't get a hit there on one of those guys where they didn't grab their max. And again, it's hard. It's hard. Anytime you get to the middle of the draft and onward, it's a crapshoot. But they didn't get a player that they could control and have cheaply to come up behind them. They do have Peyton Pritchard, which was a hit, and he's going to be counted on a bit. You're going to hope you get something out of Scheierman, but picks in the late 20s, 30, where they picked Scheierman last year, the expectation for those guys is usually rotation player. That's not going to save you. It's where's the talent coming from that's going to come up. Like, because you're not talking about those guys are nice when you're talking about them as your seventh or eighth guy, but you're trying to replace Holiday, Horford, Porzingis. These are all-star caliber players. Where's that coming from right now from them, Max? Because they don't they might need to experience some pain and fall into the lottery, or there's two ways you experience pain. One is it happens naturally because you're not that good and the NBA is going to reward you by giving you a high draft pick, or you got to trade somebody and get high draft picks or young players because they're not just going to kind of Brad's not going to pluck them out of thin air, right? How do you get
Well, no,
them?
no, that's not going to happen. Um, but I understand what you're saying because essentially that's what I was
Yeah.
when I came to Boston. Although I was a lottery pick, I was 12th in the draft. It was still looked as a okay, and the Celtics had missed on a couple of guys before me, and then I come in at 12 and I develop and I become a player of worth, and then a player, a star, and then moved on to where I went to. I think that that's one of the things. Walsh for a while, people thought he was thinking oh man, he was last year. I think people thought he was going to have a breakout year. People thought that he was going to be the defender. Anytime that Brown went out, he was going to step up. And he had a couple of uh, little plays that interested people. But for the most part, he didn't turn their heads the way I thought that he was going to have a year. So I do understand. And I think a lot of Celtics fans understand. Uh, but as you said it, you might have to experience as you're saying right now. I have to experience a little pain, man.
Who did they want in front of you? Was it Bernard?
No, they wanted in front of me. Who was
Ernie Grunfeld?
Ernie Grunfeld?
Yep.
Was the guy who was Red Auerbach wanted Ernie Grunfeld, who went to Milwaukee,
Yep.
the pick before me, and then I was the next pick.
Yeah.
And it worked out well then at that time. But you never know what you're going to get in the draft. I don't care if you pick it high, you pick it low. Celtics picked number 10 at one time and got Jerome Moiso out of UCLA. And you're going, who? Who? Yeah, he was out of UCLA. Jerome Moiso. He was picked with the 10th player in the draft. Paul Pierce was taken what? Was he
10.
the
Paul
ninth?
Pierce was 10.
10th player in the draft. Yeah,
Yeah.
is that's not gonna. Chauncey Billups was taken with the third player in
Yeah.
the draft. So I think that you look at it
Yeah.
in a kaleidoscope and you don't really know. Reggie Lewis, where was he taken? He was
In,
taken.
in the 20s,
He was taken in
late
the
20s, 27,
you
28. I mean, that
know.
was coming off like yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
I mean, we're talking about D Brown and guys like that who made great names for themselves. Once they got in this league, but
You got to
you,
find one of them.
you got to find one of them. You got to be lucky, and your development has to be there. The good thing about this year is you have opportunities with time because Tatum is a time gobbler.
Yeah.
So he's used up all these minutes, and now these minutes are free minutes.
Yeah.
Who's going to step up and take those minutes?
Yeah. We're going to draw upon a couple of Max experiences, both in terms of, in regards to being drafted on a team that maybe didn't necessarily want him and being traded and what that's like, being a superstar, a star player being traded. We're going to get into both of those things, but first, we're going to take a quick pause to talk about our friends over at Prizepicks. The Cedric Maxwell podcast is brought to you by Prizepicks, the #1 daily fantasy sports app in all of North America. Prizepicks is the best place to turn your sports opinions into actual cash. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prizepicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. A lot of ways you can play this. You can cross sports. You want to go basketball, women's basketball, baseball, hockey. What I like to do, I like to pick one game. I like to really focus in on that and pick players just from that game. And you need to go ahead, for new users, download that Prizepicks app today. Use code CLNS, get 50 instantly after you play your first 5. Download the app, code CLNS, get 50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, run your game. All right, Max, you mentioned it. You get drafted to the Celtics and you come in here and you have some intel that, yeah, they wanted a different guy. What were the vibes like there? Was it, all right, we'll live with this guy, didn't really want him, or were they still happy to have you? What was that experience like entering a new team? And I don't know if you had them on your radar when you got drafted here.
No, first of all, I didn't want to come here
Yeah.
because I was a Southern kid, and Atlanta picked a couple of picks afterwards. I think Chicago was after that. So those markets were more interesting to me. But at the same time, once I got here, I think they were pretty happy. But I think they were happier once I got in camp and played. And I remember getting the nod from JoJo White. We were in practice, and I was playing in a game, and I kind of saw JoJo out the corner of my eye. I made a nice little move around the basket, did something real cute, and JoJo looked at one of the other players who was on the sideline and said, "Here's my," and mocking and said, "That bitch can play. That bitch can play." And that was when it told me, where I stood and with an all-star caliber guy to tell me that, I had that kind of skill set that I
Yeah.
could play him at a high level.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, the experience for you was pretty quick, right? Because
Mhm.
you're averaging about 15, 16 minutes a game your rookie year. And then immediately, bang, you're playing big minutes.
Because we sucked,
Yeah.
John. The pain that you talked about,
Yeah.
that was the pain.
Yeah.
My first year in the league, the Celtics the year before that had been played Philly in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah.
And we had all these veteran guys, and we actually had added on to it with Dave Bing,
Yeah.
a future Hall of Famer, great player. And they thought they were going to solidify all that and have me, and we were going to go to the next level. Overnight, we became old. We were hurt. We were injured. JoJo White had a heel injury. Dave Cowens, older now.
Yeah.
John Havlicek in his last year. So all the guys that they had really counted on to do all these different things
Yeah.
really weren't
Yeah.
available. And then on top of that, you had Tom Heinsohn, who was going back and forth, who went, I think he might have lasted that year. He might have lasted 13, 14 games before they fired him.
Yeah.
And so it was chaos.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was the words you used. It was carnage.
Yeah.
That year was carnage, and the Celtics had to pay the price. And then you get lucky. You get super lucky. You get the Cedric Maxwell gets on that fast track that we talked about before, because
Yep.
all these minutes were available in his second year, that he had to kind of carry this team and learn the game. And then at the same time, you get lucky again, and you draft some stiff out of Indiana named Larry Bird, who was still in college. You take him early, and you saw what happened. So the cookies and everything crumbled, but then the Celtics picked all those pieces up and made some kind of souffle at the very end.
Oh, yeah. That's good. I like the souffle. But again, yeah, I mean, you're talking about rock bottom. those first couple of years that you're there, with the team absolutely cratering. So again, there it goes back to that pain we discussed, Max.
John,
Like,
John, I never got this is I love this. I tell people. My first 2 years, I never even got to 500.
yeah,
We always lost the first two games. We might win the next one, but I never even got to 500 in 2 years
yeah,
with the Boston Celtics.
yeah,
That's how bad and how painful it was. And then we get Larry, and then we go on this run that was crazy. But yeah, I had 2 years experiencing total pain with this team, thinking uh, what was April the 15th every year I was on my way home. Even to the point that we talk about pain and carnage. My first year in the league, John, we played, you know how people say you play back to back? Well, we played back to back to back to back. We played 4 straight games at the end of the year because of the blizzard of '78.
yeah,
So we went on this crazy just number of games we had to play. So it was just strange being in Boston and to lose and to
yeah.
see Red Auerbach kind of drop his head.
Yeah. So again, you talk about that, and again, the ascent was very quick coming back up from that, right? And because Red drafts Larry the year before, while he's still in college, he joins a year later, and all of a sudden you go from worst to first in 1 year, and you're winning a title a year later. So a complete turnaround. The most recent. This is what I find interesting here. That Celtics fans seem to be very, very, very much against the idea of any sort of rebuild, or blowing it up or going backwards. What I find odd about it is the bones of their most recent championship is very much because they had made a decision to detonate with the big three of Kevin, Paul, and Ray back then. Ray left on his own volition, and then they trade. But it's a different story. Those guys were clearly at the end, and the Nets did something crazy, overpaid immediately, and it blew up in their face then and there. And that netted the Celtics all of these great draft picks, which turned into the players that they have now. And you're off and running with this wave of success that they've had over the last 6, 7, 8 years. But again, we have to talk about that pain. Do they have to experience it? Do you have to go further down to come back up? Because Max, I think the worst place you could be in the NBA is in the middle,
In
because that's hard to improve because you're spending to the cap, you don't have financial flexibility, and you don't have good enough draft picks. You're not finding. I mean, you might find your Giannis or your Jokic, middle of the draft somewhere else, but realistically, you got to get somewhere up there to get that next wave of stars. So I'll ask you the hard question, the $10 million, question. Do the Celtics have to trade either Brown or Tatum and not have two supermax contracts to be able to build themselves back up? Or can they hold the line with what they have and just hope some good players fall to them in unconventional ways?
If you have those two players, you can hold the line if they're healthy. Whereas you can go grab a older veteran player and come in and piece things together. But if you're on the fast track, as my good buddy ML Carr was, of making this team bad and getting that imploding, somebody rip a couple of hand grenades out, then you might have to trade one of those players. And right now, the most viable player you have is Brown. That's just the reality. Would I want Brown to be gone? No, I wouldn't. I really love Jaylen Brown as a player, but at the same time, if you're going to improve your lot and see your future looking out there, you might have to do that.
So if you put on the Max GM hat, what are you doing with this team? Because again, you have to look at the whole picture. It's not just Tatum and Brown. It's Brown coming off a meniscus injury, which again, on its own is not fatal, but you understand, knees, sometimes the first thing turns into the next thing quickly, and all of a sudden you go from being in your athletic prime to an old man pretty fast. Because if that thing, degenerates or you go into a bone on bone situation, that's bad. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but between that and Tatum coming off the most devastating injury that a basketball player can suffer with the Achilles, their future going forward is uncertain in terms of you're not certain what level you're getting. The idea was they're in their prime. You can hold out, even take a step back, and then build back up, and you'll still be in their prime. We don't know that anymore. So there's risk involved with holding the line there. And again, I'm not trying to be a doomer, but if you're Brad, you have to look at the picture. When Jayson Tatum returns to play, Derek White's going to be 32. Jaylen Brown's going to be 30. Tatum's going to be 28, turning 29 that year, coming off a devastating injury. Like, is it certain that these guys are who they are? And are they going to be that for long enough that you can build around them going forward? That has to be part of the equation,
All right.
which
Let me
sadly
let me
changed,
put
right?
let me put my GM hat on.
Yeah.
You're right about that. And this is one thing that Red Auerbach said. I've said it on a couple of shows I've been on. You never fall in love with the product, and you're always looking to improve. How do you improve this team? I like the fact that you have two young, dynamic stars in Tatum and Brown. You may have to take the pain of this year, and then I think if you keep them, you're going up faster than you would by losing one of those guys and then trying to get in the draft and get something that is not as certain. So that's my GM hat.
Yep.
Keep those two guys.
Keep them.
Keep them. Uh, don't implode with those two guys and build around them. Because Derek White was, in my mind, you think about it, Derek White was almost an all-star himself. Peyton Pritchard, sixth man of the year. So you're not going into into your cabinet and all you got is baked beans in there. You got more than that. You got something in your refrigerator. You might have to thaw it out a little bit, John. You might have
Yeah.
to thaw that filet mignon out and let it sit for a while so it can
Yeah.
thaw. But still, you got pieces that can make this team really dangerous. Maybe not this year, but certainly in the future if you keep those two guys. My question is going to be again going back to see how Joe Mazzulla deals, and we know he loves challenges. So damn it, you got one now. You're gonna have a challenge on your hand with getting this team up to a level. Now the thing about a team like this is because they play so hard. I believe this because if if you can get them to play hard, you can win your share of games and maybe not be as good in the playoffs. A la Orlando. Orlando just played hard. They weren't that good, but they played really hard. So you're gonna have to have everybody buying in and collectively as a unit play at this level of 100% on each and every play. And if you do that, you'll be okay when it comes to playing and maybe getting to the playoffs.
Yeah. So again, for Celtics fans, they're going to have to wait. They'll have to wait a full year to see what they still have for when Tatum does
Does Tatum
return.
come? Let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Does Tatum come back this year?
No chance. I mean, I
Okay.
don't think so, but I'll ask you the question
No,
because
that's
you're
what
closer. You're closer to the
I
situation.
was. I was like you. I said that when he got hurt. I said that to my broadcast partner. He said, "Nah, he should be back by
What's
sometimes."
the point?
Exactly. Hey, you finished it already. What's the point of Tatum coming back in April? Said, oh, if he's fully healthy and he comes back and he gets himself, ready with 10 or 12 games under his belt, it's no point of that. I'd rather for him to sit down, analyze the game, be hungrier emotionally and mentally
Yeah.
if he sits out for the entire year.
Yeah.
And I saw somebody talking about these Achilles injuries. How do you prevent them? And so many great players have had them. Jay Williams said something. The analyst right now for ESPN and ex-Duke player, he said, the pace of the game. The pace of the game could correspond to these injuries because
Oh.
every possession. Yeah, are you? Am I? Did I step on your toe or something?
No, I would like to rewind a couple of episodes ago when you and I had a load management conversation, and I tried to point out that overuse. What do you want to have happen? Re- you want it, you want Liam to show up to the game? You want Liam and Xander to show up to the game and not have Tatum be there and be sad? Or do you want Tatum to tear his freaking Achilles? Okay?
Well,
And then be
Johnny, we were arguing upon about a point that he sat out. He sat out some games. I think the
I
biggest thing,
know.
the biggest argument I've had with anybody is this: can you get an independent arbiter or independent doctor to come in and save the player from himself? That's
Yeah.
the biggest thing
I
because
again,
players are going to want. Are you going to tell me that Tatum is going to play? He's going to play
I,
7 games
I'm going to tell you this.
in his prime.
I'm going to tell you that I believe that because of the thing you just mentioned and with the thing that Jay Williams said that you alluded to, the pace and space era that you're in right now with the NBA adds it makes what's already an incredibly physically taxing game for you guys. You guys are big, you guys are athletic, you're cutting, running, jumping, pounding your joints, your feet, your knees on a hard surface at as fast as your body can tolerate for 35, 40 minutes a game. And you're doing it 80 games a year. And the game just got faster and the demand is even bigger and harder. And why did you see Achilles tears and all of these things? Again, I don't know how you don't stop.
I don't know. You
If
know,
I'm a GM, if I'm a yeah,
people equate that all they want to, but did you're talking about Jokic? Did Jokic have an Achilles injury? Some of the great. I'm just saying some of those great players we talked about who were utilized a lot.
obviously everyone didn't have an
Are you?
Achilles
I mean, we're
injury.
just talking about a lot of the players who were utilized a lot,
You're
a
seeing
lot.
a you're seeing a lot of injuries. I think you're seeing it in a lot of sports because sports science has gotten guys to be as strong as their bodies can physically handle, but also they're wired and they're wound so tight that you're seeing more injuries. You see it in baseball. Pitchers are now there's a million different things mechanically and in terms of how they grow up and how they're getting them to throw. They're throwing 106, 107 miles an hour, but you're seeing the rise of injuries go up. We're at a point where the money machine is asking for more because we want these guys to play more, but then you're going to be
Well,
missing
the
stars for
money.
entire years. If Tatum, Halliburton, Lillard's careers all go south because of this injury, how many stars do you want to sacrifice? If I'm a GM or a coach, I don't want my best players playing more than 65 games in a year. That's my
Look,
opinion.
John, there's no way that you're gonna have your players playing 65 games. I just don't think that's. I think that's when you got to go to the owners and say, okay, let's reduce the schedule. The owner's not going to reduce the schedule. That's
Make the look. What I do this is I say I'm sorry, Liam, and I'm sorry, Xander, and I'm sorry, millionaire season ticket holder. You're gonna still see good players, but you're gonna be without these guys for about 10, 12, 15 games a year. Live with it. That's fine. Keep bringing the fans in, but get used to 1 out of 5 games. The star's not
well,
gonna be there.
John. I would love to bring. Now, you have daughters, right?
All daughters.
All daughters. You bring one of them, and one of them probably is a Tatum fan, right?
They loved it. They love it. And I
Look,
took
I'm just saying they're a Tatum fan. Hold on 1 second. They're a Tatum fan. And you know what? John has shelled out a lot of money here to go see Jayson Tatum play against this particular team at this particular night. What happens if the dad has already said to me right now, hey, you only can play 65 games. Hey, but that was where the tickets I bought. That in a nutshell is where you're gonna go. How do you explain that to you? What's your daughter's name that loves the game? Your oldest daughter.
Well, it's actually my youngest, one of my
Okay.
twins,
Yeah, yeah.
Rose.
Okay.
Rose.
All right. And Rose, as you said?
I'll tell you how I explain it. It's
Okay. This ought to be good.
how I explain it is, "Hey, honey, do you want another cotton candy?" And she says yes and has the best time of her life. So, and also, I'll tell you this, Max, I don't pay for tickets. I use your tickets. I use I use free tickets. I'm not shelling out that kind of dough.
John, very seldom do people have the free tickets to come to a game like that. I'm talking about
I
people.
use your
Say,
tickets.
say for instance, somebody like in Charlotte who has said, "Look, oh my God, Jayson Tatum is coming. He's only going to be
I
playing
don't care.
here one
I
time.
don't care about them.
You don't care." But that's players aren't built like that.
I don't
The
care about
league
them.
isn't built like. I understand what you're saying, but that's how. I mean, I look, John. I'm so much older than you. I go back into the time in baseball where it was an honor to watch a guy pitch a complete
Oh
game.
my God. Yeah.
Oh my God, guys would be fighting if they didn't complete the game, and and now if a guy pitches 5 innings in a game, I'm like, we're like, yay, this. And then you have a specialist to come in, and then another specialist. Is this what we're going to do in basketball right now? Somehow get it down to a specialist on top of a specialist. It can't be done that way in basketball. So I don't know what the line is and how we're going to get to it. I do understand. I agree what you say when they talk about load management, and they've tried to do as much as they can, but I just don't know what else you do. And
Oh
you
yeah.
know what else you do. I don't know what else you do when you tell Jayson Tatum you're only going to play 65 games.
Yeah. There's no again, it's a tricky situation, but again, I I want those guys playing long term.
John, you are one turd when you just said a minute ago. Guess what? I use your tickets and I get free tickets. So people right now are they're gonna bombard you. That asshole.
What what I'm
What is he talking
what
about?
I'm saying is I don't have the kind of
I
coin to pay that.
understand, John. And most people don't have that kind of capital to come out. And if they do come out, I've been a lot of these games, John. When I have people there and people are saying to me right now, "Hey, you know what? I see a kid with a Jayson Tatum jersey and coming to the game, and I know he's not playing that night. Do I want to be the one to go, hey son, guess what? Tatum's not playing tonight." And the look on his face, John, it's like it's like you right now trying to shoot your daughter away while we're doing this podcast. It's like,
She's over here saying, "Daddy, when can I go watch Luke Cornett play basketball again?" Because they don't care. They had a blast.
oh
They
my
love it.
goodness.
They like they like Luke, doing his
I,
celebrations and
I know.
just as much as they like Jason Tatum, and that's fine. Yeah, like I'm solo parenting this weekend, Max. My eldest is at a soccer tournament. She's near you. She's in North Carolina right now.
Oh, it happens. I tell you what, I hope she hydrated because it's supposed to be like 103 here today.
Oh my goodness, I should have had him stay with you. Save myself a buck or
Yeah,
two.
yeah, but I'm not going outside to do that. I'm matter of fact, I have an appointment to go to the gym in about an hour to meet with my people there. But man, you're it's really brutal here right now.
I
I
know.
mean, the weather you have for just a hot minute in Boston, but we're having that here continuously. But it was just this draft thing that came up. Very interesting to see some of the names that came out, how this thing is going to develop. Where the Celtics, and then I'm like looking. I'm actually was playing cards, and I see my friends. I'm like, um, yo, where? Oh, the Celtics are picking number 28, 29. Hold on 1 second. Let me look over here and let me. Who is that? Oh,
Yeah.
who is he?
Yeah.
And that's why I think that people like Zarin have done a great job. Danny's son to go out, look around, Brad to look around and try to develop
Yeah.
and try to get some of this talent that we don't know much about, but maybe they're going to have a compete level. Because Peyton Pritchard, he has a motor, a compete level, which is unreal. Can you find guys like that who are not viewed as real players and make them players in this league? I think that's a question.
And if you read the scouting report on that pick, the player they took out of Spain, in with 28, Hugo Gonzalez, almost every thing said about the draft experts and everything that Brad said about him as well. Motor, 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 motor. It was all about that motor, Max. And his ability and the go, 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 both on offense and defense. So again, uh, that's the type of player they targeted. I'm all for it. I actually like that. I like the taking the bigger swing on the player that you don't know what they're going to become. I also like the fact that this guy's been playing with men for the last year and has been in the system being coached at a professional level by professional level coaches over there in Europe. And they're doing a good job bringing developing players overseas there. He's been in the system for a while. So I'm actually really interested to see what kind of player that guy becomes. The 2 second-round picks are going to be here on two ways. Those are lottery tickets. If they hit, they hit. But I am interested to see what happens with Hugo.
Yeah, well, we'll see. And as you're saying right now,
Yeah.
the high motor, the opportunity he might have to play, that's a big one because again, you just as a player, and people like Scheierman and guys who are behind Tatum and are looking at that going, man, those are great moments right now.
Yeah.
Great. There's a lot of time out there to be gotten, and we're going to see if somebody can pick up one.
So let me ask you two more things before we close it out. Number one, I'm going back to the Brad Stevens press conference. uh, in terms of how he had to address the state of the team right now. It's the first time we got to hear from Brad. He can't openly talk about the trades, which can't be official until the league year begins. But the reporting is out there, and everybody knows. You've got Jrue Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis issuing their own goodbye messages to fans. It's not a secret. Um, that's the most shook I've seen Brad in a long time because he had to basically deliver, through the media to fans a message that like, guys, we're gonna suck a little bit. Like, there's no there- there's there's no other way to put it. Like, and then
Why didn't you just tell Brad to come up there with a straw, okay, and go, this is what we're
like
gonna do right now. We're
and
gonna
he
suck.
and he used corporate speak coded language. He said the term regain flexibility 6 or 7 times, and asset management, adding more assets and things like that. He kept using these buzzwords to basically, they're euphemisms for we're slashing payroll and we got to figure out a way to get more stuff. And when asked about whether they're going to compete next year and how they're going to compete and are they going to go get more guys, the what both he and Zarin said was, we're gonna have to kind of live with what we got.
The
We got
what
good players here. Now, how hard is that? You know these guys on a much better level than we do. You're close to the team. You're there. What do you think Brad's going through right now, knowing owners, you don't know what exactly they're telling them, but there's pressure to get out of that tax, which he had to do. And then there's the pain of having to give away players without getting necessarily, equal value in your return. Then you got to turn around and face the media and the fans and be like, we're looking to compete next
well,
year. And you don't have your best player as well. It's a hard
I
sell, and he's in a weird spot.
I think Brad is the best guy to do it. Let me give you an example why I say that. Brad Stevens traded away Marcus Smart. He was invited to Marcus Smart's wedding and told Marcus he wasn't going to get traded. Traded him, but Brad Stevens still showed up at the wedding. That to me is a sign of like a guy who is really confident in himself and knows what he has to do for this team. I don't think that anybody's looking at
He
any other.
knows.
And he knew that, as you said, the bill was had to be
Do.
paid.
But
You know, and because of you having that bill to be paid, I don't care how it is, you can deliver the message as good as you want. You remember, John? I'm give you a scenario. Remember when you had a girlfriend one time, way
uh,
back in the day? Way back
uh,
in the day, you had a girlfriend back in the day, and she would tell you, "I think we're gonna break up," and she said, "It's not you." What do you mean it's not me? What the hell you mean it's not me? Brad Stevens just said, look, to the fans, it's not you. It's something that has to be done, had to be done. So I think he delivered the message in the most the best way he could,
Yeah.
and now you move on from there.
Max, it's never me. Um,
Yeah,
it's never me.
yeah.
But that's fine. But in terms of Brad's perspective, you going back to his college career as a college coach and through the Celtics, he's done nothing but overachieve. Granted, he had a rough end to his coaching tenure where he had a difficult time making the pieces fit and reaching some of the players on the team there. Transitions to a role that's completely unfamiliar to him and immediately is a smash success, brings a championship to Boston. He's really only, for the most part, in his professional career, presided over victory, presided over good things, created good things, either through his coaching acumen or what he's been able to do in the front office. And he knows right now his mission is different and he's got to build it back up. But right now, he has to be the face of, I'm not going to say failure per se, but a face of something that's totally
No, he
different.
be the face of rebuild,
Yeah.
and that's what you say. You don't want to use the word out, but you're rebuilding,
Yeah.
and you're rebuilding. You're forced, and you can really say it out loud because you don't have Tatum.
Yeah.
If you had Tatum and Brown back, and you had, and you just still had Derek White, and you add small pieces around him, you're still good enough in the Eastern Conference where you're competing to maybe win the Eastern Conference. I don't
Yeah.
know if you could win a championship, but you're still competing in that way. Yeah, I think that face is really good. I think that he's done all he can do, and you'll move on from there. I mean, the easy part of being in the background is no longer there for Brad. You were good. You have young kids, and you know how it was with the Wizard of Oz when Toto finally went behind that curtain and pulled the curtain back, and he was saying, "Oh, never mind the man with the with the hair standing there. He's doing nothing for us." Well, now you're in front and center if you're Brad because of the position of this team.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt about it. It's a tough spot to be in. It was weird watching him squirm. Not and again, that might not be the right term, but it's weird watching him know this is I,
You're not comfortable.
I'm
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 not comfortable
I'm not
here.
comfortable
No,
here. I'm
not
not
comfortable.
comfortable talking about this. I don't like it. I'm stuck here. I
Well,
gotta
when,
say,
when has Brad ever been really comfortable?
well,
Talk,
I think he's
he
amazing.
is. He is always. He's been very, very shrewd in his delivery,
Yeah,
whatever he's wanted to do, and
no,
you've kind of had to fill in the blanks when it's come when
yeah.
it's come to Val when it's
Matt,
come to Brad.
but he's a master at talking a lot and saying nothing, but making people feel like he said something. He looks them in the eyes and he gives his little smirk, and the reporters are like, he likes me. And then he didn't say anything. You go back and you read the transcript, you're like, he didn't say a freaking thing. He's great at that. He's a master at it. But in this case, you could tell he was trying to use those little buzzwords and talk around what was basically like, guys, we're going down. Ship's going down right now. And that's it. So it was a weird spot to be in. I'll ask you this because you mentioned Marcus's wedding, and this is where I wanted to end things. Because it's weird, right? You get traded, you're somewhere, they value you, the fans like you, okay?
Don't.
And I think it's worse in Marcus's situation and in your situation, to be honest, because you got traded and then a good thing happened. They trade you and a championship happens. They trade Marcus and a championship happens, and that has to hurt. Luckily for you, you'd already won a couple, so you're like, look, I did my part, I got mine. They went in a different direction, easier to live with. Marcus spent his life here, didn't win it. Now, Kristaps and Jrue, they also did win it. So again, their perspective is different. But I'll ask you yours. When you get traded, what's that like for your relationship with the existing players? What's that like for your relationship with the coach? What's that like for your relationship with management? What are the feelings you're going through when you're you and something like that happens and they're like, you know, we're moving on?
It is. And it depends on how long you've been there. With Marcus's case, he was homegrown, so that was a whole nother story. He was homegrown. I was homegrown. I had been there all my career. I didn't know anything else. So to all of a sudden be exiled and sent out, it was very, very difficult and very painful. I think, and even now, I think the relationship is really different when you think about players because back during my time, there was no cell phone. So we weren't communicating the way these guys communicate now. We weren't Twitter. We weren't having, going to people's homes. So my relationship with the former players I had, I missed them, but I knew I had to go on. They probably missed me. Knew I had to go on, um, and it was bittersweet
Yeah.
in a way. And you think about winning the championship. Well, obviously, I had one too. Finals MVP. Uh, Seventh game of the second one you win. 24-8-8. So my legacy with this team was in a good place. It was just that I got hurt. They felt like I couldn't. I didn't try to come back from an injury, and it gave them an opportunity to trade me. And I talked to Robert Parrish about it. He said I really felt bad for you, in the sense. He said Red Auerbach came to me and said Max doesn't want to play here anymore. He said Red, that's not true. Why are you guys putting that narrative out? And I think that's the same thing with Marcus. I don't think that we question Marcus's hustle, his grit, his determination, but where he fit in this team, I think a lot of people in the media, including you, always had a question about
Yeah.
his shooting or lack of shoot or playmaking
Sure.
ability. But he was just as confident as you right now, not confident in it. He was just as confident. One
Yeah.
time the Celtics went on a road, went on a run, and it was me and Marcus late at night in Orlando. We both went down to pick up our bags, and the Celtics were playing well, and he had just been inserted into the starting lineup as a point guard. And I remember saying to him, I said, Marcus, so you guys are playing well right now. And he looked at me, and I will always remember this. He looked at me and he said, that's what happens when you let your fucking point guard handle the basketball team. And because of that, that put me in that way, like, look, the way you felt about him, the way he felt about himself, those were completely different things. So
Well,
it's hurting when you leave. I'll put it like that. It hurts when you leave. For him, it probably hurt more because the very next year you win the championship,
yeah.
and that had to be very very difficult. I mean,
Yeah.
you think Grant Williams leaves, you win the championship. So all these things happen, and it is as painful as can be, but it's something you have to understand as a professional.
Yeah.
That's something you have to move on.
Yeah, I will say, similar to you, with Jrue Holiday, uh, they won a championship recently. 2 years prior, the year before, and that's twice now. Jrue Holiday has been an integral part of a championship team, and that team has decided I don't want you anymore. In the first case, they thought they were upgrading by moving on from him to bring in Dame Lillard to placate a star, their star player. And in this case, it's money. Now, you talk about Marcus's confidence. Yeah, the players feel the way they feel about themselves. So, from a fan perspective, one might look at Jrue Holiday and say, well, it makes sense. He's got a big contract and he's making a lot of money, and he's getting older. But Jrue Holiday thinks he's Jrue Holiday. He thinks he's a great player and still one of the best players in the league. He was one of 12 players on the Olympic team a year before. He was the first guy selected to that team. The world values Jrue Holiday. So if I'm Jrue Holiday, I'm thinking, I like it here. I've planted roots here. I won a title here. You know who else makes money? Derek White makes money. Jaylen Brown makes money. Why did I have to be the one to
Look at
go?
his. You
Uh,
start
the
looking. Well, start looking at.
so fans felt that way. I don't know that
Look at
Jrue
his age.
Holiday felt that he
Look,
had to go.
but the obvious. You look at his age.
I
You
know,
look
but
at
he
you look
doesn't
at.
look at it that way.
I
He's
don't
thinking
care. I
I
don't
can
care how you
play.
look at. You look at your age. You look
But
at that.
you think
People are
he
looking at.
is?
I think that Jrue was very hurt by leaving, but he was just as hurt when he was with Milwaukee. So to be jaded on the second time, it isn't like a big surprise. When he was in Milwaukee, I remember reading just before they traded him, he had put on the Instagram, he said Buck for life. Well, Buck for life was 24 hours and they had traded him.
Yeah.
So for him to come here, you know the business. And this is the big thing about it with Jrue Holiday, which is completely different than Marcus Smart. Jrue Holiday had been with 6 teams, 5 or 6 teams. He's been around the block, and teams have valued him. He's been traded. Marcus Smart, on the other hand, was homegrown, had been with one team, went down to Memphis. Memphis cast him away, and now you're in exile in Washington. So where he was, where I was, and where Jrue Holiday would be are completely two different places.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And again, you're right. Every situation is different. Before we wrap, I do need to point out that Cedric Maxwell, while he does host this podcast here over at CLNS Media, and he's a voice of the Celtics, also is moonlighting, hanging out with superstars, going over on the Shannon Sharp show. Max, what's been going on there? What's in store for you guys? What have you been doing, and what's happening in the future with that little
Oh,
collaboration?
I don't think anything is happening with that collaboration. I mean,
How's it going though?
I went in and did well. Shannon Sharp, this is one of the things he ended up sending me a bottle of his Shea cognac, as a parting gift. I was on for a couple of shows and it was really good. We had a lot of fun, but that's not a regular gig that I'm gonna have. But you always got it. It's the thing I learned from you. I learned for people who have been in media. You always have different
Yeah,
opportunities. You
different
never
avenues.
miss an opportunity to put your name out there and just to show you what you could do. So I enjoyed it, but
Yeah.
again, it's back to the grindstone, and we're gonna find out what the Celtics are gonna do, and just really how this season is gonna prepare and move on.
Yeah. Back in the days, Max, when I had to be the one to order cars to come pick you up and bring you to NBC over in Burlington. Yeah, you gotta go where the action is, right?
Go with the flow, baby. You go with.
Yeah, it's all good. Once again, thanks everybody for tuning in. Here you can catch obviously Cedric Maxwell here on the CLNS Media Network. Check over our check. You want to pop over to our NBA Storytellers and Legends channel as well. If you like, to hear Max talk about some of the stuff that happened back in the day, and a lot of great stories and a lot of great legends talking about things over there. You can check it out there. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications. That way, you know every time a new video pops up, and plus, you can take advantage of all the other great programming we have on that channel, in addition to the show that I host, the Garden Report. We did 4+ hours on the second round of the draft, Max. That's the dumbest thing I've ever done, but we did it. So you can check that out if you want to pop in. It was mostly just me making fun of Bobby, or just us being goofy, but we did it. But there's still a lot to talk about with this team. So you can catch it on this podcast. You can catch it on the host of other podcasts we have on our various CLNS media channels, including hearing from Sherrod and Noah and Brian Robb and Jay King and Gary Washburn and a lot of great Celtics voices, Adam Kaufman, Evan Valenti, and many, many more. So check us out. Also, hit up our sponsor if you want to. Prizepicks, #1 daily fantasy sports app all in North America. Pick more, pick less, win up to 1,000 times your cash. It's that easy. Download the app. Code CLNS, play 5, get 50 instantly in your account. That's all you have to do. Download it, CLNS, play 5, get 50. It's that simple. Prizepicks, run your game. Max, parting words?
No, Celtic fans just keep the faith.
Yeah.
Brad Stevens is a genius. Is what he's done so far. I think you'll see more, but eventually, even if the Celtics go down, the cream is going to rise to the top again. And so you'll see. I think you might see some dark clouds right now, but eventually, that's the silver lining for some great players to develop and Tatum and Brown to get back together.
There we go. Max bringing some sunshine to take us home. Thank you, Cedric. Thank you guys for listening. Please like and if you're, like I said, if you're watching on video, like the video. If you are listening, please rate and review us. We love ratings and reviews. And we will see you on the Cedric Maxwell podcast next time. Take care.
All right, guys.